Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Addiction Help Podcast, where we discuss the latest in sports news and entertainment as it pertains to addiction recovery, and mental health. Dan Hauser here. I'm your host. That's Jessica Miller. She is my co-host, editorial director of addictionhelp.com. And we are back and better than ever after taking 1 week off, because you may notice our setups are a little bit different now. We have some new equipment, we have some new technology, and we are super excited to now take you into kind of phase 2.0, so to say, of the Addiction Help Podcast. So, Jess, how are you doing in crystal clear 4K quality
I
this
know,
week?
and I hope I sound better too, because I was just using, a headphones mic. It's good over here. I did notice, like, when we were, right before we started recording, there's a storm rolling in, and occasionally I think the mic is picking up the thunder. So if you guys hear thunder, it's not a weird sound effect. We live in Florida, so,
Yep. Yep.
storms just happen constantly here.
Hey, listen, we won't bog you guys too much with everything, but to say that it was a process this last week, trust me, we weren't taking the week off just because we just didn't feel like recording and talking to you guys. It was a process to get the what you're looking right now to look this way. So,
Yep.
yeah, we're just going to get right into the show this week. Like Jess mentioned, we have some stores rolling in. My internet was actually active this morning, so last thing I need is for that to go out in the middle of us doing this too. So, on that note, our main topic this week is going to be uh, Alcoholics Anonymous and support groups as a whole. So last month, Alcoholics Anonymous celebrated their Founders Day, which was to June 10th to be exact. So June 10th, 1935 is the day that Alcoholics Anonymous was officially founded in Akron, Ohio. And so, Jess, you've done extensive writing about Alcoholics Anonymous. I know I've done a little bit of writing about it
Yeah.
too. Just for those who may not be familiar about it, or just say, oh, that's the thing I've seen on TV before, just
Right.
kind of share with everyone a quick little recap, so to say, of what Alcoholics Anonymous is.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like, it's something that we all at a certain point in our lives have heard about. They talk about it on TV. It's, movie tropes, but like what actually is it, right? And there is something that's related to it. There are actually a lot of like offshoots of it and things, but the original was Alcoholics Anonymous. And like Dan mentioned, it has actually been around since 1935. Which actually that surprised me because I don't know, it's not like alcoholism is a new modern problem. I mean, that it's something that's been around for a long time, but I don't know why that number sort of shocked me. Um, but it was founded
No,
by,
it absolutely shocked me too. In fact, when I was doing some of
right.
the prep work for it, I knew it had been around for a long time. Like I said, I've written a little bit about it in the past. You've written a lot about it in the past. I guess I just forgot maybe that it
Yeah,
actually started in 1935, which, I mean, that's just been a very, very long time as far as how long it's been going on for. And the other thing I found interesting too is the fact that uh, AA meetings take place in over 180 different countries. So think
right?
about the number of
Yeah.
countries that we have in the world, around the world. It's not even a little bit just a United States thing. It's worldwide to an extent of pretty much you could if you were somebody who was looking for some sort of support group, you could pretty much be anywhere in the world at any given moment and find some sort of AA meeting to attend.
Yep. The founder himself, Dr. What is it? There's Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob Smith. I wanted to make sure I got this correct. They both are or were recovering alcoholics. And I think that's so true to the nature of, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but to the nature of really one of the hallmarks of AA is that it's, for recovering alcoholics by recovering alcoholics. And I think that's really cool. And it's a completely free program. So there is no cost involved. And they do take donations and it's funded completely by participants. And they're very big on this. That's why you don't see like fundraisers for AA. You don't see, like walkathons and like things like that because they're very big on wanting to fund it themselves.
And most importantly, too, for those who may be thinking about going to one or haven't been to one because they're not sure what it may cost. It's completely free. You have no financial obligation to attend a meeting. Now, yes, will they
Right.
kind of pass a little hat, a metaphorical hat around and say anyone
Sure.
that would like to chip in, because they are a charity. They are registered as a charity. They're a 501c3 organization. So obviously they're not any money that you put in, they're not profiting off of. That every dollar that goes in is going back out to help people that are in the meetings, whether it's renting the community space that the meeting is in, whether it's providing snacks and drinks and coffee, or whether it's, funding, maybe guest speakers, or if they, I mean, obviously there is a professional that kind of leads them, and we'll get into this when we talk about different types of meetings. So there are overhead costs involved, but no,
Right.
it's not like you can say, oh, I'm going to give them $30 today, and then it's going in somebody's pocket. It's not. It's
Right.
going 100% back to helping not just yourself, but everyone else participating in those meetings as well.
Yep. And I love that. I think that that's that's the way to do it if you're going to do it, honestly. Um, so then I guess that's a really good segue. Let's dive into how AA actually works. You mentioned some different meeting types. And like for most people, I think we see like one style in particular in movies and TV a lot. It's the participant style. And I don't know if they actually have official names. They might. Um, but
So
there's
they
like
do
the
actually. So
okay,
there are two different
take it
types
away,
of yeah.
Dan.
So there are two different types of meetings, like you mentioned. So there is
That's
something
right.
called an open meetings, and then there are ones called closed
Oh, right.
meetings. And so the ones that you described that we see very commonly on TV or portrayed in movies, those are what's known as closed meetings, and those are ones where somebody stands at the front and talks, and everyone kind of sits and listens, and then everyone kind of takes turns. But it's for only for those that are you know uh, addicts only, for lack of a better term. Like you
Yes.
have to be suffering from some sort of substance use disorder, whether you are trying to get trying to recover or have been in recovery for a while. It doesn't matter the stage you're in, but you have to be participating in recovery in one way or another. And then open meetings, they're called that for the reason, because they're open to anyone who wants to come. So
Somewhat self-explanatory. Right.
yeah.
So yeah, if
So
you want to go with someone like a loved one, if you're being supportive, if you're curious, um, yeah, open meetings, like Dan said. That's
open meetings, yeah, are great. So, we hear sometimes about people who are like, hey, somebody might be scared about a meeting, and you might say, "Hey, listen, if you want to go check this out, I'll go with you." That would be at an
yep.
open meeting, or I guess you could say another variety of open meetings, but it's a little bit different. Is Al-Anon, and we'll get into that more in
Yes.
a few minutes. But Al-Anon is specifically so where a closed meeting is specifically just for the addict themselves. Al-Anon is specifically for the friends, family member, and loved ones of that addict, so they can kind of not only learn more about what their loved one is going through, but also learn ways that they can be helpful at home. And then, just like everything else, to have a support system of others
Right.
that are there who have a friend, family member, or loved one that is also in recovery.
Right. Because let's be honest, if you have somebody that's in active addiction or even in recovery, it's hard. That sucks. And,
So you
like,
just
let's not sugarcoat it. Let's say, like, you need support if you're going through that as like a relative, loved one, spouse, whatever. And so, Al Anon existing for specifically for people who are the loved ones of whether you're in active addiction or in recovery. I mean, that's so key and so, so helpful.
you brought up a good phrase there, active addiction. So
Yes.
another very important thing and a vital thing about Al-Anon is can also be a great place for those who, let's say you have a spouse, a sibling, a direct family member, a loved one who is, battling addiction currently, and they are suffering, and you're not sure the best way to help them, because we talk about ultimately at the end of the day, they have to want to help themselves. But sometimes you
Right.
can kind of sit them down and talk to them and say, hey, listen, I think you should get help, or I want to help you. Al-Anon meets can be a great way to learn how to do that. So Al-Anon is not just for those who their loved one is already in recovery. It can be for someone who is still actively struggling and they haven't even gone to treatment yet. And you can kind of use Al-Anon as like a sounding board, or just saying, oh, I had such a bad day today. My husband came home and you could tell he was drinking all afternoon, and it was a
Right.
really rough day for me, and I wanted somebody to talk to. Or it could be something as simple as, hey, I really want to help my brother out. He's not doing well. What would you guys suggest? What
Right.
has
What
worked
are
for
the
you all? What would you
resources? What do I
recommend? So
say? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So it's not just for those that are whose family members are in recovery already. It's for those who also, you may, whether you're frustrated, upset, not confused, not sure what to do, that can help. They can help you, from at that standpoint too, in that those kind of early phases of recovery.
Well, then let's talk a little bit about going to an AA meeting, what to expect. Because I feel like for me personally, I've never been to one. Um, but I feel like having again, what we see in movies and TV is just like one portrayal. And so, I would love if I were somebody that were wanting to go to an AA meeting, I would love an explanation of like, okay, so I go, like, what's it going to be like?
So you mentioned how you've never been to an AA meeting. Full disclosure, I have also never been to an AA meeting. That being said, there is a great guide on addiction help that I have here, and you have it as well. And we can kind of go over some of the key points of what to expect in a meeting, what they're like, what the rules are. So just right out of the gate, so we mentioned that there were open meetings and closed meetings. Within closed meetings, specifically, there are two different types of meeting structures within that closed meeting. So one is going to be a discussion meeting. And in a discussion meeting, there's going to be one person running the meeting. Everyone's going to be kind of like sitting around in a big circle. And that person will open the meeting, pick a topic for discussion for the day. And then everyone will be able to take turns kind of going around and sharing.
If they want.
And if they want, no, of course,
Right.
as we talked about earlier, sharing is 100% optional. I think we
Yeah.
talked about that off the top. If we didn't, sharing is 100% optional, guys.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's another thing that, for anyone who might be worried about speaking or don't really enjoy speaking in front of strangers or in front of large groups, you don't actually
Yeah,
have
because
to
that's
talk.
hard, especially if
Yeah.
you're new, you've never been, you're not ready to like unleash all of your everything that's going on in your life. Sometimes
Look,
just
not
listening is
to
helpful.
kind of pat ourselves on the back, but we make it look easy with what we do here, where we're talking for the
True.
45 minutes to an hour once a week during this podcast. A lot of people, it's not quite as easy for them, and so that, of course, that's absolutely understandable if you're somebody who doesn't particularly want to talk. But so within that meeting, usually the topic of discussion comes from the big book, from one of those 12 steps. Sometimes each meeting will kind of go in order, or they'll kind of jump all over the place. So that's it depends on that. The
And you
other type of
mentioned, sorry,
sorry.
before we go into
Yeah.
the next thing, you mentioned the big book. And I feel like, a lot of people know what that is. And I just wanted to throw out there. So the big book is essentially what they call the guide that they use for AA. And it outlines, you hear about the 12 steps and the progression that attendees go through. And that's all contained within the big. So I just wanted to
No, yes, thank you. That was another
illustrate
thing
that.
we kinda glossed over there. So, yeah, so
I
everyone
mean,
knows
there's
what the
so
big
much
book is.
information, right? Like we could do multiple podcasts on the topic. I just want to make
W
sure that, if anybody's listening
Yeah,
and they're like, wait, what's that? You can also go on addictionhelp.com and read the articles that we've written.
absolutely. Yeah, we could probably do an entire 45-minute episode just on the big book and breaking down the
True.
different 12 steps. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and like you just mentioned, Addiction Help
Yeah,
has
yeah.
got a lot of great information on that. So, the other type of meeting is what's known as a speaker meeting, and that one is run a little bit differently. So, during a speaker meeting, specific attendees are basically selected to share. So, it's not like you go around and take turns. Like, basically, before the meeting starts, the speaker will kind of pick who they want to speak. And then, so what'll happen is that kind of meeting is more set up where there might be a podium at the front or a speaker area at the front, and everyone's kind of sitting behind. And the person going up there will um, share their story of sobriety, maybe share what happened to them during the week. So for those of you, and Jess, I don't know, we haven't actually talked about this before. I don't know if you've seen the show Mom.
Mm.
No, okay,
No, yeah.
it's not on anymore. It was a CBS show for a couple of years. It had Anna Faris in it, but
Oh,
for
love
those who
her.
have seen the show Mom, speaker meetings are kind of what they showed on the show. Like when they were going to their meetings in the episodes, and they were all sitting there, one person would be up on a podium. That's kind of an example of what a speaker meeting looked like. So, an example of what you may have seen in television or even in movies. So that's kind of more of what a speaker meeting looks like. Jess,
I
did you have
think,
anything more to add
yeah,
as
I was going
far
to
as
say
kind of the?
the other style of meeting where everybody has the opportunity to share, but there usually is a person that's kind of guiding the meeting. If anybody's seen the movie Renfield with Nicolas Cage, fantastic, by the way, we loved it, surprisingly enjoyable, but they have meetings that are of a different nature. I want to say those are for people who are, well, I won't spoil anything, but it's not AA, but it's done in a very similar kind of a way where, there's an open conversation, people have an opportunity to share. It's more casual, set in a circle versus what Dan was talking about, where you have a speaker officially at a podium kind of addressing an audience. And then in Renfield, it's more like everybody's sitting in chairs in a circle with the meeting leader essentially guiding conversation.
Yeah. So, and then real quick too, if you want to just kind of take us home, so to say, and go over
Yeah.
kind of how these meetings traditionally end, and then we'll move on to kind of the next topic that we had for today.
Yeah, that actually is a good segue, I think, too, because it does technically end with what's called a serenity prayer. And this is going to be an excellent launch into what we're going to get into in a second about, some myths and misconceptions and things about AA. But the serenity prayer is basically something that everyone sort of says together. And it basically is kind of an acknowledgement of this sense of maybe not powerlessness. I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but it's basically stating, I'm just one person, and without your supports and without being actively working on my sobriety, I wouldn't be successful. And so it's kind of this like sort of group acknowledgement, and then that's sort of kind of where it ends. That
Yeah.
being
So,
said, yeah, a lot of people, yeah, a lot of
yes.
people have this concept that AA meetings are religious. And technically they were when it was first founded. It was a Christian organization, but it's it's really changed over time. Just like the YMCA, it's a like a sports group, a family like athletic sort of center. Actually, one of my first jobs is I was a YMCA camp counselor, and it was a lot of fun actually. And that stands for the Young Men's Christian Association, and I think people forget that, and that's where it was founded, but in no way do you have to be religious to attend the YMCA, and there's nothing really religious about it. AA now is very similar in that aspect, that it's not you don't have to be religious.
So the religious component of AA is you do kind of within the big book, you kind of I don't speak to a higher power, I guess you could say. However,
Yes, you
but
rely
there's
on
no
a higher power.
definition or requirement of what that higher power is. So the higher power can be whatever it is that you choose. So if you would like to choose a religious figure as your higher power, you can. If you want your higher power to be something spiritual or just
Or
something that
science
you
even.
science or something that you made
Yeah,
up, that's okay too. So while there is while there is that kind of aspect of a higher power, it does not have to be a religious higher power. So
right, not
that's a
necessarily an entity. It's more the acknowledgement that, like, there is more to the world and something bigger than me, and I think that is the key really, is acknowledging that this is everything is bigger than myself and my own struggles, and that sort of juxtaposition, I think, can be very helpful for people. It humbles us. It reminds people that, you know, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. The world's going to keep turning, and can just be very helpful as a guide as well.
So we also have mentioned this throughout, but a couple other just common misconceptions that we really want to hammer home and just remind everyone about. First off, going to AA does not cost any money. I know we've
Right.
mentioned it a few times. They do accept donations. You are under no obligation or requirement to provide any sort of financial donation if you do not want to. Obviously, if you want to, great. All that money goes right back into the meetings themselves. We touched on earlier, they need money to cover the cost of to rent out the space for the meetings, for food or for snacks, for coffee or sodas or drinks or whatever it is, and just kind of basic fees like that. But there's no requirement. Also, we touched on it earlier. There's no requirement to speak. So a
Yeah.
lot of times people think, oh, I'm going to have to go and talk in front of all these strangers or in front of people that I don't know. You know, if you want to sit in the back and just listen and kind of almost act like you're not even there, whatever we say this every week now, whatever makes you comfortable, whatever makes you happy, and whatever's going to help you get the help that you need and
Right.
be sober, do it. So if that means you're going to sit in the back and basically pretend that you're not there and you don't want anyone to acknowledge you, then that's your journey and your path for these meetings. If you're somebody who wants to get up there and talk for 30 minutes, as long as the meeting people will let you do it, then have at it.
Right. I know people who've been to A meetings, and, there are different ways of approaching it. I know some people that have gone to multiple meetings and never said anything and then finally felt compelled to speak. And there's others that felt comfortable talking right away because they were kind of in crisis and had hit what, for them was rock bottom. And then after that, they didn't really feel compelled to need to share. So it really, it depends on what your needs are, and it's fine. It's it's structured, but it's also very casual and flexible, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think it's safe to say that the concept of AA has been very successful since its founding in 1935, because there are now multiple spin-offs. Jess, I know you've written a ton about many of these spin-offs, so if you just kind of want to share a couple of the more common and popular spin-offs of
Sure.
AA and kind of how they fit that AA mold.
Well, one of the key terms, first of all, is anonymous. And the idea is, you come together as a group and, you share, but you also protect the anonymity of the other people that are there. So you're not going to, put pictures and talk about, like, yeah, my friend Dan, I met at AA, here's what he shared. Like, it's just, that's a no no. And so while AA was first, there are so many other ones that are based off of the same structure, which is the 12 steps. And like we said, we're not going to get into what all of those are, but that essentially works as a guide for recovering addicts, in AA's case, alcoholics, to go through a step by step process at their own individual rate. And it's going to vary per people or per person. And so from AA, we have very popular and common is Narcotics Anonymous, and that's for people who are addicted to narcotics, obviously. And then, we even have some for behavioral addictions, such as Gamblers Anonymous. And, if you are struggling with a particular substance or a particular issue, check and see if there is like an AA or 12 step spin-off, because like Cocaine Anonymous, for example, that's another one. I mean, there's so many times when we're writing these pages for addiction help, I will find resources, or Amanda will find resource that is something, fill in the blank anonymous. And it's an organization based off of the 12-step program for AA, tailored specifically to whatever that issue is. And there's just so many.
They even have them for things like porn addiction and whatnot. I know I
Yep.
was doing some pages on those for a while, and I was pleasantly surprised. As you mentioned, you look we look up resources and we find the key for when we do these pages is to get everyone the information they need so they can get help. And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that, yeah, I knew about Gamblers Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, some of them, but like even something I don't want to say is niche, but it's very specific addiction, and even for
Right.
something that
Like Cocaine Anonymous.
specific,
Like I
yeah,
didn't I didn't
exactly, yeah,
expect that. And it was like, that's excellent.
even for, I mean, niche might not be the right word, but even for these, there, it's a very specific type of
Yeah.
addiction, and they have these helpful resources. And another thing too that all of the entire world has kind of done this, but also the support group field has done this. Obviously, post COVID, well, during COVID, they had to adapt, and now
Mm.
post COVID, used to be that you could basically only go to these meetings in person, and now they offer them online, which means that
Heavily
you could be
online.
sitting in your house in the comfort of your own home and basically virtually attending a meeting, whether you're on Zoom or whatever platform they use. So you really don't even have to, if you're not comfortable, you don't even have to leave your own house anymore to go to attend these meetings, which
Right.
is
Maybe you don't have the means to. You maybe have one vehicle, or you live in an area where public transportation is sketchy or spotty. Like, you just, there are so many options available. And I think that that's phenomenal. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
yeah, the more ways that people can get help, the better. So obviously, the easier that it's made, the better. And so uh, uh, being able to do it online is just another way of being able to help people.
Yep.
Like you said, if they don't have the ability to get out, or quite frankly, if they feel more comfortable doing it in their living room or doing it in their,
Yeah.
in somewhere in their house, as opposed to going to a strange community center or some, building
Right. That can
that
be
they don't know about.
intimidating.
And
And yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
So basically, AA, being that it has such a wide reach, has all of these additional cool resources. And one of them, you can find on, especially like cruises, on the printout that you get at the airport, even on the airplane. If you go to a staff member and you ask for Friends of Bill W., and if you remember, Bill W. is one of the founders of AA, they will make that announcement. And people who, just kind of like, hey, if we have any friends of Bill W., could you please come to the front? It's just like a regular basic announcement if like someone's missing someone from their party or whatever. So it doesn't really call weird attention to it or anything. But those in the know, those who attend AA, will hear that and know somebody is struggling right now and they need support. And I've heard people talk about how they've utilized that, and that's been very helpful to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been on my fair share of cruises in my life, and every day you get the daily kind of itinerary, or it tells you, what activities are available, what times that day, and lo and behold, yeah, every single day on those sheets there is whatever time it is, a Friends of Bill W meeting, and it's in one of the lounges or one of the common spaces on the ship. And yeah, so I mean, literally, like we mentioned it in the very beginning, 100 meetings are available in 180 different countries. You could even be in the middle of 30,000 feet over land or in the middle
Yep.
of the ocean, and you can still find a meeting if you need it. So yeah, they are
And have those resources because
they're
like I hear
absolutely
that.
readily available at all times, no matter where you are.
Yep, I hear that so much from people who, because we talked a little bit about resources and, Leah, one of our guests, if you guys saw that previous podcast, talked about, AA doesn't work for everyone and that's fine. But for those who do enjoy AA, they really love it and are also, they're so profoundly grateful that community as a whole loves to give back and to help others. And so if you're looking for a support system, AA is phenomenal for that. So like the Friends of Bill W is a perfect example. You are struggling in an airport because you're at your terminal and there's a bar right there and you're like, "Ugh, I don't know what to do." Talk to, one of the people at the airline desks or a staff member. They make that announcement and a stranger from, who knows, on their way, airports are so liminal, on their way to wherever or from wherever is going to be there to help you. And I just think that's such a fantastic community, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on that note, that
Yeah.
will wrap it up for today's show. Jess, thank you for being with me as always. It's been a week. We're back though. We're recording. We are going to be back doing this weekly again. So that was just kind of a 1 week where we kind of took the week off to get our new setups going. So of course, if you like what you heard today, or you like what you see now with our crystal clear video quality, be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's you're watching on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you happen to be listening to us or watching us. Please like, subscribe, review, rate,
Right.
whatever
Helps.
whatever that platform says for you to do. Please
Right.
let us know.
Leave
Send
us
in any questions.
questions, leave us
Yeah, send us
comments. Like,
questions. Yeah, we
yep.
love doing these kind of mailbag episodes. So please send us some questions so we can do those again. And as always, if you or a loved one is struggling with substance abuse, addiction, or mental health, help is available. Findtreatment.gov is a great place to find treatment options in your area. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration also has a toll-free helpline, and that number is 1-800-662-4357. Once again, that's 1-800-662-4357. And of course, addictionhelp.com, where you can continue to find all the great work that Jess is doing there with her amazing resource pages and great and helpful information as well. So everyone, I hope everyone had a happy and healthy and safe 4th of July, because this is coming out after the 4th. So I hope everyone had a
Yep.
great 4th. I hope everyone ate tons of food and enjoyed the fireworks and had a great day. So thank you all for tuning in. That'll do it for this week, and we will talk to you all next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye, guys.